Hello, and welcome to another episode of Strange Dominions. I am your host, Octavian Graves. Tonight, I am speaking with Timothy Renner and Chad Renning of the Strange Familiars podcast, their project, The Witch Cloud. I am joined by my co-host, ceremonial magician Luke Bell. We speak on The Witch Cloud, ghosts, Bigfoots, magic, and everything in between. If you have seen something strange or unusual that you would like to come on the show and talk about, such as a cryptid, a ghost, a UFO, or anything else, please send me an email at strangedominionspodcast@gmail.com. That is strangedominionspodcast@gmail.com. That's all I have for right now, so without further ado, let's get into the episode.
You're the one. Rings around me.
And that was the beginning of The Witch Cloud, and I am here with Timothy Renner and Chad Renning, and my special magical co-host for the night, Luke Bell. How are you guys doing?
Doing awesome.
I was waiting for everyone else to answer, and then I was like,
so was I.
Guess I'll go first. And we just stepped on each other. I'm fine.
Good. Well, I'm glad you guys are all here. So we're going to be talking about The Witch Cloud tonight, which is, it's been out for a while, but you guys are putting out the second paperback edition, right?
Yeah, the paperback edition just became widely available. So the original edition was just available directly through me. It was a hardcover, and then we did a widely distributed paperback version, which you can pick up at Amazon or wherever you can order books.
Awesome. So this show has a lot of influences, but I can't deny it that The Witch Cloud is a massive influence on the creation of this show. And so it's very, very special to me that I'm having you guys on. And to kind of help with the magical and esoteric aspects of it, I have with me Luke Bell, the ceremonial magician.
Hello, Frater. How are you this evening?
Very good. So whichever one wants to start, Tim and Chad, I'm going to try and ask the questions I know you've already been asked, but just as a starter, how did you find this bridge? Where did the idea where did this bridge come from to you?
Well, I knew the guy who built it. No, I'm just kidding. It was built in the 1870s or something. Chad will probably know the exact date. I forget. I was at a paranormal conference in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and this was way back in the early days. I think I just published my first book. So unlike now, where there's a constant crowd of Beatles-like groupies around my table screaming and trying to get to me, I had a little bit of downtime at this convention. And I was listening to the people next to me, and they were some ghost hunters, and they were talking about Gettysburg. And I'm just kind of sitting there listening to what they're saying. But I heard Gettysburg, my ears perked up because it's not far from where I live, not far from where Chad lives. And I heard them say the scariest place in Gettysburg is Suicide Bridge. And I immediately got the image of this very, very tall bridge that, people were jumping off of to kill themselves. But they said, like, we were there one night and we just kept hearing this banging, like someone was banging on the bridge, and we couldn't see anyone. And at the time I was like 100% just Bigfoot head. Like I like the other aspects of the paranormal, but I wanted everything Bigfoot. And I'm hearing banging on a bridge, and I'm thinking like, maybe a ghost, maybe something else that likes to bang on things. So I kind of put that in the back of my head. And a few months later, it could have been even a year later, it might have been the following Albatwitch Day. I think Adam Soraya from Where Did the Road Go and Adam from Conspiranormal came to that Albatwitch Day. And Adam said Adam was going to go back up to New York with Soraya, and he said, "Well, I'm going to come back down and go to Gettysburg. Do you want to meet up again?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll go to Gettysburg with you." So he comes back down a few days later, and we meet up. He got a hotel room. He was going to stay in Gettysburg for a few days because he wanted to not just do the ghost stuff, he wanted to do the history stuff too. And we were, kind of seeing sights and driving around and stuff. I had my second Strange Familiars co-host, James, with me at that point. He was with us that day. And we were kind of like, hey, I said, let's go to this place, this Suicide Bridge place I heard about. And they were down. So I was like, okay, here we go. But in the meantime, I had already done some research on this place and like looked for actual suicides there. And I was, my first book is kind of this combination of like debunking urban legends while also exploring like the really weird things that did happen in Toad Road in this location in York County. So I was kind of considered myself like immune to these like urban legend kind of things, and very flippantly went there and saw that you couldn't kill yourself by jumping off this bridge. And I was jokingly called it Broken Ankle Bridge because I assume that's the way people were saying people were jumping off the bridge. And I was acting very flippantly to the place and kind of like, so, show me what you got, all this kind of stuff. And not much happened, although I did take a photograph there that night. When I got home, there was a anomalous light, little orb on the bridge. That's published in the book, in the photograph. But nothing else really happened except as we were leaving. At the time, you could drive down the road a lot closer to the bridge, not right up to it, but a lot closer. And you could park there. And I had parked there. And James says, I need to relieve myself. And he goes off into the trees. And jokingly, I gunned it and drove, not like, but pretending I was going to leave him there. I drove like 100 yards away, and it was just getting dark at this point. It was like dark-ish, and turned around and came back, and James is standing by the road, and he is kind of irritated with me. And he said that when he was urinating, he's like, all the whole woods came alive, and like the trees were shaking. He was scared. He's not an easy one to scare usually. He was definitely unnerved. So he got in, whatever. And then I kind of forgot about the place because I was like, wasn't super impressed with it. And several years later, Chad and I were hiking around the battlefields in Gettysburg. And I think at the time they closed at 10 p.m. I think they close earlier now, but at that time it was 10 p.m. And we were looking for someplace else to go. And I said, well, there's this bridge I heard about. You want to go there? And I kind of told him the urban legends and everything. And then, but we got there and immediately things started, we definitely got some weird feelings. I don't know if we got sounds right away. Do you remember, Chad, if we got sounds that first night?
I think we did a couple. We did meet the two individuals that we met the second time.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah. Bethany and Shannon.
Yeah, thank you. I'm bad with names, so sorry, Bethany and Shannon. I don't mean that as an insult.
But yeah, we met them. There was something about it, though. Oh no, that's when you had gone down the trail, and you immediately were like, oh, in that area, you were like, oh, yeah, I feel sick, and then I think you went home that night and got sick, and there was enough there that brought us back, and then subsequently we had, I don't know how many visits, but most of them, it proved to be one of the most active places we've ever been as far as poltergeist-like activity and so forth.
It's a very interesting bridge, and you're right. I've been there, and it's not... I can't see anyone killing themselves off that bridge. It is interesting because after this book was published, I was going... This was probably December. I was hiking in Catoctin, which is, northern Maryland, and I needed a Christmas gift for somebody, and I was trying to find some metaphysical shops, and so there was one in Gettysburg, and I was like, well, I have the day, so I'll go up there, and I had and this is kind of ties into it. I had some, I ate some like Mexican food at a restaurant in Maryland, and then I drove up to Gettysburg, and I stopped at the bridge, and so I went on the bridge. I hung out for a while. I think I actually recorded just while I was there. I had my audio recorder on my phone, and I didn't really feel anything there. I didn't catch anything on my phone, but when I got back that night, I probably had the worst food poisoning I've ever had in my life. Now, was that the bridge or the Mexican food? I don't really know, but it is an interesting coincidence. So the Witch Cloud, where does that name come from?
That is from an article. There's a folklorist from Pennsylvania, good folklorist, not a great linguist. A lot of his translations of French and German and Pennsylvania Dutch are kind of wonky, but he was an excellent folklorist. He collected a lot of folklore. His name was Henry Shoemaker. And he published an article in 1939 in the Altoona Tribune. It was actually published in a few papers, but that's where I sourced it from. And he describes this area where people were seeing the ghost of an elk, but they were having all this other paranormal activity as well, all associated with this one creek he was talking about. And this is a quote from the article. He said, basically, he said that people were describing that phenomenon as a witch cloud. And he said, so this is the quote from Shoemaker: "Where the witch cloud hovers, anything may happen, even a specter elk, a werewolf, or even a bruchlach, as the very old Pennsylvania mountain people call a vampire. All of which reminds one of George H. Burroughs' deathless description of the Estadia of Spain. The Estadia are spirits of the dead who ride upon the haze, bearing candles in their hands." So, since we started getting all this different phenomenon there, poltergeist phenomena, but people were reporting things that sound very much like Bigfoot and look very much like Bigfoot from what they described, although there's no great wilderness there. There's a little bit of woods, so, and weird lights and so forth. So we were getting all this strange phenomenon, and that quote kind of stuck out in my head for that reason, but also because at some point Chad suggested that the area, whatever is there may indeed be vampiric because of how sick he was getting and how drained he felt. In fact, I think he might have suggested that the first night after we left there, because I think we went from there to what's that place in the Black Corner we go?
The place in the Black Corner?
Yeah, in Michaud, that town, that a ghost town.
Oh, I'm thinking Tartown.
Tartown. I think we went from there to Tartown, and we were talking about it the whole time. And at some point you said, and I thought this was pretty interesting, because there's this really, really cold spot on the other side of the bridge on the path that you can walk into, and it's just frigid. Even in the summer, you go there and it's super cold. It's the coldest cold spot I've ever felt, like at a haunted place. And that's where Chad felt like he was getting sick and so forth. And he said that I said, well, what do you think's happening there, or something like that. Anyway, Chad had this idea. He said, I feel like we're getting drained. He said, I don't feel like the ambient temperature is going down in that area. I feel like whatever's there is like draining from us, and we feel cold because of that. And we kind of suggested this idea of this sort of vampiric nature of the area. So because Shoemaker mentioned that the bruchlach, the vampire, in that witch cloud as well, it made me think of that, and that was the genesis for naming the project the Witch Cloud.
That and the fact that the area where we always felt the coldness always seemed to have a mist about it also.
That's interesting. And it's a great name. And it's interesting how there's so much going on at this bridge, and then people are seeing and experiencing stuff at this bridge so much, yet the historical aspect doesn't really line up with those. Can you talk a little bit about that, either of you?
Sure. Well, it's very close to a very famous haunted bridge that, a lot of times you'll see like a a show on the ghosts of Gettysburg, if they're doing something on, I don't know, one of those TV shows like Unsolved Mysteries or something, or they'll talk about this, one of the places they'll talk about is Sachs Covered Bridge, which is also supposedly haunted. And it is half a mile, 3/4 of a mile. It's a pretty easy walk.
Yeah.
Directly from that bridge to Eisenhower Bridge, which is, so-called Suicide Bridge. And no one ever connected these two things. I'm like, wait a minute. There's these two haunted bridges that are super close together. No one has talked about this, that they literally, one leads right into the other. Like there's no connection here. And I think the reason why is because Sachs Bridge has Civil War stories, and Eisenhower Bridge is built after the Civil War. And everyone is so focused on Civil War ghosts in Gettysburg that they think, they can't be connected because that wasn't there during the Civil War. But the issue with Sachs Bridge is the stories about the ghosts there. They usually tell a story about these hanged Confederate soldiers, which has not been proven. Someone corrected us and said there could have been hanged Confederate soldiers there, but it's never been proven. It's historically it's not proven that anyone supposedly General Longstreet hanged 3 deserters from the bridge, and our theory has been, if you're getting out of there, if you're leaving, if you're on retreat, and you're in the middle of this massive battle, 3-day battle, are you going to take the time to hang people up, make a display of it, or are you just going to pop them in the head and get going? So someone on Facebook kind of argued that they would have hanged them or something, but regardless of whether they would or wouldn't have, there's no historical evidence of these soldiers being hanged there, and yet people see apparitions of hanged soldiers there. So this is very interesting, and it plays into a theory that I wanted to tackle, and I want to tackle more on the lines that I kind of took on the Bigfoot is an ape theory with Where the Footprints End. I really want to someday get in a little bit deeper and tackle this ghosts are all the souls of dead people thing that I think is probably held more dearly and more firmly by the ghost hunting people than the Bigfoot is an ape people by the Bigfoot people. So
it's absolute heresy to go against that idea.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a struggle, but I think it needs to happen because whatever people are seeing and experiencing there, maybe they're bringing there. Maybe it's because of the energy of hundreds of people who have heard these stories and have attended the place, or maybe whatever is there. And you can talk to Chad about this. He one of the first things he said is he got the impression that it's a very old energy there. So maybe whatever is there, if there was something pre-existing, is kind of playing off of people's, what people bring to it and the expectations and so forth.
Luke, I think you had some comments on this, didn't you?
Well, I had some thoughts. Yeah, I was just curious, gentlemen. Obviously, like your initial impression there was that potentially there was some kind of cryptid situation, as in like Bigfoot or something along those lines. Presumably, that's not the stance you're taking anymore on whatever it is you think is inhabiting that bridge. Would that be a fair assessment, or am I putting words in your mouth there?
When we go to a place, we never go in with any expectations.
Right.
When you say cryptid, are you defining as a flesh and blood creature or as a supernatural entity?
Well, I'm by and both Tim and Octavian will attest to this. I'm quite the layperson when it comes to the paranormal. So when I'm using cryptid, I'm using it in the most umbrella term possible.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe you can define like what your
well, the problem is you can't really define it because really nobody knows what it is, and if somebody is telling you what it is, they show the proof. Correct, Tim? Show the homework.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
we need
so
to see your math.
Exactly. And but no, when we usually go into an area, we try not to go in with any preconceived notions.
Hmm.
And the reason being is, at least for myself, I'm not, if I'm not speaking correctly for you, Tim, please correct me. But we try and do that so that the experience we have are as genuine as possible.
I think
So
that's
that way,
that
Go
is
ahead.
definitely accurate for now. I think when I initially heard about the bridge and I heard knocking, at that point,
Correct.
I was
Yes.
probably hopeful that it was a Bigfoot thing.
So maybe it would be more accurate to say that at least what you were hearing was congruent with other phenomena that you've heard associated to Bigfoot sightings. Would that be a more maybe like accurate way?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. And the thing is when you have these, I guess you would say, what, class B, Tim, the sounds, the knocks, and all that,
Yeah.
they are common throughout a lot of different paranormal experiences,
Oh, yeah.
whether it's poltergeists or other entities, ghosts, whatever, lights. All these are common across the board. And we found that, and it seems like nobody wants to take the broad approach, and they try and put everything in boxes, if that makes any sense.
Try mixing all of these different phenomena within the magical context, and it's even a bigger uphill battle.
Yeah, I'm very much the layperson when it comes to the magical context, so that I will admit. But no, we do come at it with a point of view. We try and look at it holistically, as far as like with a broad envelope. But we also, there is a lot of commonality between the cryptid phenomenons and these other phenomena.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I think go ahead, Luke.
Well, I was just going to say that's really interesting, and I think that again, what you guys were describing there, the idea that so many people had kind of come to a conclusion or had some belief that there was something existing in that place, almost sounds like you were describing some kind of like thought form or egregor had kind of manifested on this bridge. And Tim, you and I have kind of softly sparred on the spirit model versus the chaos model in the past. So I'm just like, how much weight are you guys putting behind that that concept that you're entertaining at the second, or do you believe that it is something completely autonomous and external that's existing there now?
Short answer is I don't know, but my gut says that the longer we were there, the more I feel like it's a both and kind of thing. I feel like Chad's right. There was something old there that I think that bridge, by the way, used to be called Redding Bridge, which is Chad's last name, before the Eisenhowers moved to the area. That all that land would have been owned by Reddings. The Eisenhower farm, which is directly across from the bridge, was bought from the Reddings. So Chad may indeed have some kind of bloodline kind of connection to this land, and he was always more deeply affected by it than I was. So I kind of tend to, like I said, kind of believe that there is something older there, but that it may be playing off of, how does it know? I don't know, what either the energy people bring to the area, or if there's some way that whatever it is can understand or know these stories that people are telling about the place, that it is playing off of those a little bit.
That's fascinating. So go on, sorry.
Let me add to that a minute, Luke. I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off. One thing I did notice, one observation I made, is the night that we left the recorder there, when we caught a bunch of bangs and other phenomenon. I had made the observation that when we were on the one side of the bridge where the cold spot is, which seems to be the most active side, after we had left the recorder, when we went back to the vehicle, it seemed like the phenomenon picked up. And to me, it was like it wanted us to come back over. So you said about it being like, is it something that we bring, or is it like its own thing? I think I agree with Tim that it's probably maybe both. Because if this thing, I shouldn't say thing because I don't know what it is. If whatever is there does have its own intelligence and it's trying to draw off people or whatever, it's going to use whatever it can get from that person, what that person's looking for, to bring them to that place.
As in,
Make any
keep them
sense?
there.
like
Yes.
baiting them to come back, you mean? Like,
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that makes sense. So, I had a couple of thoughts on this, guys. If you'd indulge me sharing them with you, and I'd love to hear what you thought of them.
Please.
So, obviously,
Sure.
as Tim and Octavian know, I'm a practicing magician and completely new to the world of the of paranormal research. So, I look at everything through a ceremonial magic context, because when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? But,
Correct.
But the thing that I noticed, I couldn't help noticing as I was listening through to some of your field recordings and some of the things you were picking up.
He doesn't have the book, but I sent him all of the audio of the book, so that's what he's getting his information from.
That's fine. Yeah.
Some of nearly all of the things that you're describing, the knocking, the drop in temperature. Chad, you mentioned at one point that there was you said, you guys corrected yourself. It was that it was oppressive, but not quite oppressive. And I know exactly. I think I know exactly what you're talking about there. That kind of claustrophobic feel to the atmosphere around you.
Yeah.
These are all like the initial signs of the arrival of a spirit that you would feel prior to physical manifestation of one during the context. Sorry, in the context of a ceremonial ritual. So it was fascinating to sit and listen to these things and hear, be able to kind of check some things off and go, wow, that's exactly what I experienced, almost in that exact order as well. And of course, my mind immediately went to the fact that there was something else that was existing there. And the other thing being that particularly in ceremonial magic, we look at the spirits as very location based as well, so much so that they even have directions that they're called from and that they arrive from when you're actually doing the operation. So magic is surprisingly directional. And so it wasn't a surprise in the least to hear that there was like a specific area that was really high in activity, and it didn't seem to kind of move. If I'm getting that right,
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
I found that to be really, really interesting, and also the fact that and I have some thoughts on this that I'll maybe share with you guys in a bit. The fact that it's on a bridge, and bridges seem to be these areas of high concentration for paranormal activity, right?
Oh, how can you get more liminal than a bridge?
Exactly.
Connects one place to another. It's if it's not over water, it's over something that's usually hard to traverse in one way or another. Yeah, it's. I have great respect for bridges in terms of the things we're looking at.
Well, the interesting thing is that when and Octavian and I have discussed this in the past. So there does seem to be that whenever there's paranormal activity, if for want of a better term, it seems to be usually close to bodies of water or on a bridge, like running water. And we were kind of spitballing why this might be. And one of the things that I noticed was that in a lot of the old manuscripts that we strange people practice from, there's a long history of binding spirits to water, and that spirits can't move past running water. That there seems to be particular hierarchies of spirits aren't able to move past bodies of water. And I was wondering if maybe it's not the running water itself that's necessarily attracting the entities, but rather that they're bottlenecking around that area because they can't move over it. And so a bridge provides a singular spot where these spirits can move across. and therefore ends up being an area of high traffic, if you will, for these types of entities. What do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that is super interesting. And, being where it is, Gettysburg is, depending on who you ask, the most haunted place in Pennsylvania, perhaps the most haunted place in America. Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really interesting idea. I was always kind of playing with the idea that because it's an iron bridge and iron and the supernatural don't always get along, that maybe a lot of the activity was concentrated there due to frustration because they couldn't go any further because of the iron. But I like your idea as well. I really like that idea.
Well, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other as well, Tim, because in ceremonial magic, there's a long history of iron being used to bind spirits, or at least delineate areas where spirits can't come. One of the first things you do as a magician when you're practicing is you would trace around your circle with an iron blade, and that's a tradition that goes way back to Hellenistic Egypt and the practice of spiritual evocation there, because spirits fear iron for some reason, and it seems to be something that can at least do them some kind of damage, probably not the kind of damage that we quite understand. But you also see that in other types of folklore as well, where people would put sharp iron scissors under a cradle to keep fairies away from the children. And so perhaps you've found somewhere that is the perfect storm to kind of trap a spirit, as it were, in that it's made completely of iron and is in this area that they wouldn't otherwise be able to cross. So perhaps something has got stuck there, literally.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things one of the ideas we were playing with. But now I like this idea of the spirits traversing over that bridge. Go ahead, Chad. Sorry.
Yeah, that was going to say that was something we actually were discussing amongst each other. Because when you look at a map of that area, there's almost 3 creeks that come together there. So it's Marsh, Willoughby Run, and I don't know what the little creek that crosses.
Yeah, it's like a little feeder creek.
Yeah, I don't even think that even has a name.
It almost makes an island out of the area.
Yeah. And I was saying to him as this investigation was going on, I was like, I wonder if something's like stuck in this spot. And I do like the idea about the bridge. I mean, what is a bridge but just a pathway over a boundary? It's a doorway in a sense, And
I do think as well that people view, when I think spirits and spiritualism tends to get conflated, unfortunately, sometimes, and I personally don't think they're necessarily the same thing. But I think that a lot of people don't seem to feel that creatures that we would call spirits, which isn't really a great word to describe them anyway, but it's the best one that we've got in our vocabulary. That they don't abide by rules and aren't constrained by certain aspects of reality and physicality in the same way that we are. And my personal experience and the experience of other people that have had interaction with them, at least, has been that they do, and that there are rules, and that there are things that they can and can't do, and there are things that they are afraid of, and then they're not omnipotent and completely able to wander wherever they wish to go. And that certainly, I mean, again, there's the history of water being not conducive to a spirit being able to move from is a very, very long one. Some of the oldest magical texts available talk about, I mean, even in things like the Testament of Solomon, it talks about spirits being bound in water and that they can't escape it. And it, in fact, narrows what type of spirit down quite considerably as to what it would be if it can't cross water. So I found that really, really interesting to hear about all of these things that kind of intersected.
Yeah, I mean, I might push back on you a little bit and say that you say you're not a paranormal person, but you may be exploring the paranormal through magic with all these commonalities we have here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're necessarily mutually exclusive, and I have Octavian to thank for kind of introducing me to that idea, because this has been his ongoing thesis for quite some time, I think. But I've been kind of living in my own little magical box, and he said, well, actually, there's there's a lot here to explore, and they do seem to be real definite crossovers, and that they give you quite workable theories to run with, even if it's just an experiment.
In the same way, I get excited when I look at folklore and there's correspondence, like all over the world they say the same thing about the lights for the most part. Don't follow the lights, et cetera, et cetera. When you get these things and you find these things, like, wait, we are saying the same things, from these different cultures, or in this case, different points of study. We're saying the same things. To me, it lends a weight to them. It's like, so here we are coming at things from two different directions, two different areas of study, in a sense, and we're saying the same things, essentially. It lends a lot of weight to them, to me.
Before I want to get into the rings around me aspect to this and that entire episode, but one thing that I want to know is there's a portion when you're talking to someone who said they see something. And Chad, you said that you saw it too, but there wasn't really any expansion on that. Can you guys go into that whole episode for a little bit?
We were interviewing two ghost hunters that we saw walk up to Suicide Bridge, Eisenhower Bridge, and they stayed for maybe 2 minutes and turned around and walked back. And we kind of grabbed them on the path and we're like, hey, can we talk to you for a minute? And can we interview you? And they kindly agreed. And as we were talking to them, now I was facing them and Chad was in the same direction as them. So Chad could see in the direction they were seeing. And I'm asking questions. And this guy says, he's reported, he says, I just saw a big black shadow walk across the path. It looked like in the shape of a man. I forget exactly how he described it. And Chad said, yeah, I see it too. Now there's a section clipped out of that where we walked over to wherever he saw it. We didn't just let that go, but there was nothing there. It was like, just for the flow of the audio, it just worked better to keep the interview, kind of flowing. So it's not like we didn't check it out. We walked to that area and just, there was nothing to see. But yeah, and Chad can describe, what he saw.
Yeah, it was basically just like a big black shadow, and it was at least 7 feet tall, and it crossed the path behind Tim. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it was just this big man-shaped shadow that went across.
And that's really interesting, just because for the most of what you guys were experiencing, it was mostly auditory, or, you could feel stuff and you could hear stuff, but there wasn't a lot of visuals on anything, right? Other
than lights.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting that that's like the one thing you actually did see.
And it's in the Estes, the Ghost Box session we had done on the bridge previously. I asked it, when will we see you? Or when, again, I don't know the exact phrasing of the question. And it said next time. So,
yeah.
And that was the next time.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of go ahead.
No, I was I'm fascinated by the you briefly touched on the feeling of something there, and again, this is something that I've experienced in the past. I just wanted to kind of maybe drill down on what it was you felt when was it when you saw this shadowy apparition? Was there like a sense of dread? Was there a sense of something? What was that kind of emotional experience like?
Oh, for me? To be honest, it's hard for me to remember because that was a while ago. But it was kind of like these guys were. I remember the two guys were definitely done with the area. They're like,
yeah, they were kind of spooked. And
yeah, they were spooked. And at that point, go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
We were doing our best to kind of calm them down. So my impression, and Chad, you can tell me if you're wrong. My impression is like you didn't want to overreact and scare those guys even more.
Yeah. And at this point, Luke, I've seen so much and have experienced so much. I don't want to say I've become callous or jaded, but it takes a good bit now to shake me. Not trying to sound like I'm some kind of brave, macho person or anything like that. But, he basically was like, yeah, I just saw this shadow, and the guy was definitely shook. And that's why, I said, it's okay. I see it too. Meaning I saw it, but I didn't want to note it too much because I didn't want anybody to freak out, if that makes any
Right.
sense.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, Chad, it didn't sound in the least bit like bravado. I completely empathise with what you're saying. The reason I ask is, again, it's just another crossover. That, again, one of the initial signs, one of the earliest signs of the arrival of a spirit, at least in a magical context, is usually some kind of emotional response from the practitioner, and that can be quite abstract sometimes, but one of the most common ones is, it's not necessarily a reaction to a stimulus. When you see something that scares you and the adrenaline kicks in, it's more of a sense of dread. What people describe when they experience shadow people and sleep paralysis and things like that, a deep dread that doesn't seem to have any genesis in the external at the time, but there's something just very wrong, and but there's a whole spectrum of experiences you can have during magical operations, and that can be everything from ecstatic euphoria at the initial the initial signs of their arrival, but the most common one is dread. And I just wondered if there was a dot that we could join there as well, because we seem to be doing quite a lot of that.
Well, when I first heard that bit and I was reading it, I kind of assumed that there was like a Bigfoot type thing going on. Like you saw a large, like 7 foot tall man like shape run, walk across. And I was thinking, is there like are you experiencing, ghosts, but like spirit activity, but also Bigfoot activity at the same time. And this kind of whirlwind of different phenomena all coalescing at the same time.
Well, that's what I took it as too, because earlier this guy's talking about something pacing him in the woods. He's not a Bigfoot guy; he's a ghost guy. And he's
but
like,
you're out in the wilderness, so that we would look at that as a Bigfoot thing.
And he's like, there's something was pacing me in the woods there, up to the bridge, which we've heard multiple times ourselves. We've been paced, and that one area. The last time we went, we kind of did a follow up for a recent Strange Familiars episode. And the last time we went, that area was bugging the heck out of me. If you remember, Chad, I kept like moving over.
Yeah, I do remember.
Kept like giving it a wide berth. There's something about that area in particular, but that's where he said it was pacing him, and so and I was and I've done this before with other people that I've been interviewing. Chad can attest to it. I'm so focused on the interview that when he said, I see something, it didn't click to me like I need to turn around and run and go look at this thing. I was just like, I was in the interview. And I've done that before. Chad got bluff charged at Harry Springs, and I was so in the interview I didn't even hear it. Chad like ran and grabbed me and like, go, because something huge was coming through the woods. And I was just so focused on the interview that it didn't, I didn't hear it until after when we went back and listened. So, there was, I think, a number of things happening there.
And I think the term wilderness geist really does apply to the Witch Cloud and a lot of the areas that you guys hang out at. You mentioned when you were explaining the feeling about the Estes method you guys were doing, and that kind of brings us to the intro that I played. Can you just go through the entire sequence of events from the beginning of the Estes method and then the ritual and all that, just the whole thing?
Yeah. So I'll come right out and say I have no clue the origins of this. I learned it from Hellier. I saw it on Hellier. I thought that is a way more interesting way to use the ghost box than just playing the ghost box and hoping to get random hits to what you're saying. So I suggested to Chad we try it, and basically, so what it is, and again, I may be describing this wrong because I just saw it on a documentary. But so most people just play a ghost box, and a ghost box just goes randomly through AM or FM or both radio stations and stops, and you get bits of speech, and people ask questions. Is there anybody here? And you get yes. Oh, somebody's something's here. or whatever, or the weather today is whatever you get, you get. But the idea of the Estes method kind of separates things. So we decided to use Chad as the quote unquote medium because we felt he had again this sort of connection to the area.
He just likes using me as a guinea pig, really. Tell the truth. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So he's wearing headphones. He cannot hear me. I'm asking the questions. Chad can hear the ghost box. I cannot hear the ghost box. So we have this separation there. So I'm asking questions. He can't hear the questions. I'm standing behind him, so he can't see me even ask the question. And he's answering based on what's coming through the ghost box. So in this way, I can't be influenced by the ghost box, and he can't be, influenced by my questions to look for, specific answers or anything like that. Now, we've done this in places and gotten nonsense, so sometimes you just get nonsense and it doesn't make sense and it's not working. On the bridge, in the sessions we did there, it seemed like every question got an answer that made sense, or at least wasn't nonsense. Now, I have a theory, the way these things work. It's based on nothing other than, it's just a fun theory. You can call it science fiction if you want. But if the other is not constrained by time, as I don't think it is in the same way we are, and you have this device that's using radio signals to communicate with, what can it do but go ahead, sort of skip ahead in time and say, okay, I need an answer to this question. I have the following phrases to choose from that are going to be, spoken over the radio, and choose one of those phrases. And with timing, it can come through and actually make some kind of sense, and you get some kind of answer that makes sense. So these interviews, most of the questions, I think everyone answered and like made some kind of sense. So it was pretty powerful stuff as far as a ghost box session goes. And that was the setup. I forget the second part of your question, Octavian.
Well, I just wanted to know, what did the ghost box say, and the visuals that you got, and just the entire episode of what you talk about in the book about the ritual and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we did 2 sessions that night, and I will probably conflate them as to what was said in which session. But I could just read it from the book. So again, Chad can't hear me ask these questions. I said, who's here or what is here? And then the reply I got was, the other one striking, which was an incredible reply. Because, I refer to it as the other. Chad now refers to it as the other, whatever.
I call it the other.
Yeah. And we were definitely getting things hit there all the time. So the other one striking is an incredible response. So right away, I was kind of like, my ears perked up. Like, well, I think we're going to get a good one. I said, can you tell me anything about who or what you are? And it said, a gust eventual, which is a weird phrase. But again, you have this idea of gusts of wind and so forth coming up around these encounters.
Yeah.
I said, what do you have to say to us? What do you want to know? And it said, I praise. So, I don't, you can parse that out if you want. I said, is there something to do with the mist here? Can you tell me about the witch clouds? And it said, mastery of today. These are very strange phrases to come through. Again, sometimes we've been doing this and you get like, I love you, baby, and stuff, because there's sections from songs coming through.
Right.
But these are very strange phrases coming through. I said, come through and let us know about you, about whatever you are. And the answer was holy. I said, you're holy. Then why do they call this Suicide Bridge? And Chad answers again, lights in the shadow, which is creepy. It's like we saw so many lights there. Yeah. I said, there are lights in the shadow. We've seen them. And then he actually cut me off, said, I'll be back. And I said, will we see you in the lights or the shadow? And he answered, just night, next time. So, and the next time would have been the time we saw him. And then I said, what about this time? And he replied, gone away. And then we kind of ended that session. We left and came back a few minutes later and tried again because we had so many good hits that time. I said, can you give us some information about you, what you are, what is here, who is here? No was the answer. I said, okay, why not? And the reply was, ain't got love so long. I said, does that mean you don't want to talk anymore? The reply was, under bridge. Very specific to where we were. I said, what's under the bridge? The reply was, love coming. So if you go back to the previous answer, it said, ain't got love so long. And then I said, what's under the bridge? Love coming. And I said, who are we talking to? Answer was the man. I said, okay, do you have a name? You're the one. And then I said, you're talking to me. I'm the one what? And he said, rings around me. Let the voice on one condition. And then I said, what's that? And then it was get out, run. And we took that as our ending of that session. However, when it said, you're the one, rings around me, I got the most intense vision immediately, like flashed into my head. Very, very clear. And I saw myself on the bridge in ritual robes. And I do not do this. Isn't me. I don't do this. I saw myself in ritual robes on the bridge, drawing a circle, burning some kind of offering, and trying to get this thing to manifest. It was so intense that I thought, I have to do this. And I thought, I was preparing to do this. I talked to, again, this isn't the kind of, I'm very interested in very clean, very, very pure kind of folk magic. This gets a little deep for me. So I'm consulting people who do this kind of stuff. I talked to Ren, Octavian, get some advice and like what do I need and how do I prepare for this? And as it went on, I found myself getting very anxious about it. And eventually, I'm just preparing this, and Chad is just basically like, well, whatever you want to do, if you feel like we need to do this, because part of me was like if I don't do this, I'm not fulfilling my destiny, and maybe I'm being afraid, and I need to fulfill my destiny. If this is what I'm supposed to do, I need to do this kind of thing. But then the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was being led to do something that I wasn't comfortable doing. And I started to come to terms with that. And eventually I was like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this just because something, which I don't know what it is, on a bridge, puts this image in my head of me doing this. And the minute I decided not to do it, I finally decided, like, I'm not going to do it. A weight was just lifted from me. It was just, everything just became a lot clearer for me. I have nothing against this practice. If someone wants to do that, I'm not, saying the devil's going to get you or anything. It's just not me. It's not something I do. And it wasn't even so much the practice. It was the idea that I was being led to do it. I felt eventually like I kind of was like, Mom, I feel like I'm being led into something and I want to do things on my own terms. And I kind of backed away from it. But when I did, I felt much lighter in general as regards to the bridge. But certainly that. Later on, we talked to someone, a guy who leads ghost tours there. Very interesting guy named Clinton. And he was talking about a friend of his, he said, who came to the bridge one night and had found what he described as a pentagram, but which you and I would see as a magic circle, depending on how it was done and so forth. That was on the bridge that I think was in chalk because it's not there now. It would have to be something that could have been easily removed. There's no like spray paint or anything of a pentagram on the bridge. So I believe it was either in chalk or powder or something, again, something that would be easily removed. And was very convinced that someone was doing some kind of magical operation there. And I certainly wonder if I wasn't getting some kind of, Soraya's idea about the malleability, about how this stuff kind of reaches back and forth through time. I was wondering if I was picking up on that ritual maybe when I got that little vision.
It's a very interesting theory. The one thing I want to ask you, I'm going to ask you more about the ritual, but I want to ask Chad, what was your feelings about this particular aspect to the Witch Cloud, and what is your kind of opinion and experience with magic just in general, and how it kind of bleeds into what was going on with the bridge?
I have not had much, as I said before, I'm very much a layman when it comes to that. I have no experience with that at all, other than like what I know from it from folklore, which it seems from what Luke was saying, it seems like a lot of folklore has a lot of the magic tradition in its background.
Yeah, it does.
What he was saying. So that is all I have as far as magic. I've never practiced it. I've never been around people who have practiced it. I've seen it in places around in the forest. So I never, I'm not intimidated by it or anything like that. I do, however, don't like to poke things, if that makes any sense. So with any of the entities or whatever, just to use the term, even though, because like Luke said, it's the best term we have. Any of the spirits and whatever that I have encountered, because I have encountered other things, I just kind of respect them in their territory. They do seem to have a certain location where they are. They seem to be, I don't want to say bound to a location, but they seem to be, that's their home turf. And I usually respect them, and they seem to respect me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. So you were pretty supportive of if Tim wanted to do this ritual?
Yes. If he would have done it, if he would have went through, I would have done whatever I could to help him. And also the most important thing is to make sure he's safe.
Right.
And that is always my goal, is when we go out on these outings, is to make sure that everybody's in safe.
Of course.
Even to the point of even not worrying about myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
So,
I think that's a really important part of magic. And I think that, that's a very universal feeling.
Correct. And with my training, with the wild skills I have, when you're out with a group of people and you're out in the woods, especially like when I'm out with my fellow woodsmen, we're a family unit at that point, because we have nobody else but ourselves to take care of us, because hope is not the word I wanted. Help could be far away. So we have to take care of each other. We've had times where we've camped with individuals who are, lack of a better words, not good people and not as well skilled as they say they are, or they turn out to not be a good person. But at that point, we tolerate them because they're part of our group, of our family at that time. So we need to take care of each other, even if we don't like them at the time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
So when we're out on these trips, even though the bridge isn't that far away, it's important that I take care of him and he takes care of me, vice versa. And that's what we do. So, but I will say this, I was going to support him if we would have done this, but I did have the feeling that it just didn't feel right. If that made any sense.
No, that's fair.
Another thing that had occurred to me when I decided not to do it is Chad had been literally every step of the way with me in this, other than that very, very first initial visit some years before. He was there every single time, right beside me the whole time. And when I got that vision, and I mean, it was a very clear vision. I very clearly saw, it was like snapped in my head, just was there. There was no Chad. And it didn't occur to me at first. It didn't occur to me until I decided not to do it. I was like, wait a minute, where was Chad in this? What was his role? Where was he? And that kind of disturbed me a little bit too. I was like, almost, I don't know if it was trying to separate us or what, but that aspect of it was another kind of bothersome component to me.
No, I understand that. It's interesting. So when you got the vision and you were kind of contemplating doing it, do you remember what kind of research you were doing? Did you have like a specific kind of ritual in mind of what you would do if you were going to do it?
I forget what Ren was suggesting. Honestly, I was mostly just talking to Ren about it. I don't, Octavian, at the time, you and I don't know if we were in correspondence or not, but we weren't talking regularly. So Ren would have been probably my closest associate,
right,
who had done this kind of work. So he didn't. I don't think he recommended a particular book or any particular ritual, but he was basically saying like I would get this, and this, and I don't remember how far we got in as far as like any particular evocation or anything like that. But it was more about gathering materials, I think.
Well, it's interesting because in what you got from the Estes method, Rings Around Me, in a traditional evocation, the ring is around the practitioner. So it would be around you, Tim. You'd be in the circle, and whatever you were trying to bring about would be in a triangle or just in front of you, but not in any kind of ring. And so it's interesting that that's the connection you made. And I would have made that too. Just the wording of it is interesting. Luke, did you have any feelings about that?
Yeah, just maybe a slight pushback against that is that whilst magic circles are almost ubiquitous to nearly every at least in, I would say nearly all types of magic, but at least especially in Western ceremonial magic, there is precedent for spirits being called into a circle. Depending on the type of spirit, and even with strangely enough, I brought up the Book of Oberon before we started recording, which is, whilst concerned with calling chthonic spirits as well as other types, mainly concerned with calling a hierarchy of fae or fairies, and they are constrained to a circle and not a triangle. The triangle is actually a fairly new addition to ceremonial magic. That's mainly only really found in the Goetia. Prior to that, whilst the magician would always stand in a circle, there is actually precedent for spirits being called into them as well. But there's always what we'd call a spiritus loci, or at least generally there's a spiritus loci, an area that the spirit is called to and constrained in. But yeah, it's not always a triangle. The magician generally always stands in a circle, but you can call spirits into circles as well.
If I remember correctly, Ren specifically brought up a summoning a spirit into a circle, and I believe we were talking about drawing two circles. One would be the protective circle around the magician, and then the other would be to do the evoke the spirit into, or however, whatever the proper terminology would be.
That's the exact proper terminology. Yeah. And yeah, so there is precedent for that. So that's really interesting that's what came up. And this might be a little bit of a long shot because I know this wasn't yesterday that this happened, but I don't suppose you guys remember what day and maybe even what time you did the EVP recordings.
Let me see if I noted it. I might have.
I'm looking too.
November 14th, 2020.
Yep.
Which would have been let's consult the oracle that is Google. November 14th, did you say?
Yeah.
November 14th. Probably was, I don't know what time it was. It definitely was late.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Would have been a Saturday. Interesting.
That makes sense. At this point, it might have turned past midnight, so it might have been the 15th. At the point where we were doing these ghost box sessions.
And I'm wondering. I was just trying to make. Maybe I'm doing a little bit of mental gymnastics here, but I'm the fact that the spirit mentioned love twice. I had almost hoped that maybe it would have been on a Friday, which would have been the day ruled by Venus, particularly concerned with love and things like that, and not necessarily that the spirit was concerned with that particularly, but it was from at least on a hierarchy that could only be called under the influence of Venus. But that's blowing my theory out of the water, so never mind.
Well, it's worth a shot. And like I said, if if this is some kind of other thing that is using the ghost box, using these radio signals to communicate, they're limited in what they can say and how they can say it, because they have to be limited to whatever's coming over the radio at the point that they need to, quote unquote, answer the questions. So you kind of have to, it's like half symbolism, half truth, half, suggestion, etc. I think that when you read into these answers.
Yeah, without a doubt, sure. And I mean, even during actual evocations where you get audible voices from a spirit that's in front of you, or at least communicating with you audibly, seldom do they speak in a particularly cogent manner. So yeah, there is always a little bit of an interpretation that goes along with that. It was interesting though that I wonder, whilst I can completely understand your reticence to wanting to perform a ritual at the essential behest of something that you have absolutely no idea as to what it is, I wonder if you correct me if I'm wrong, but you in one way or another ask the spirit how you can communicate with it, how you can get its name, essentially, right? And am I correct in thinking that, Tim, Chad? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I don't know if I was thinking specifically. I think I was more interested in how we could see it, basically.
Right, and then shortly after, you get this vision of this ritual. I wonder if it was answering your question. If you want to see me, then you have to call me and bind me in the same way that any other spirit would be.
Yeah, maybe. I absolutely could be.
Maybe it wasn't something as insidious or nefarious as we might think. Again, whilst I can completely understand why you wouldn't want to do that. It is interesting, though, that, Tim, that you brought up the distinction between folk magic, the magic of the people. You can't see me, but I punched my fist in the air as I said that. Magic of the people, and ceremonial magic. And I think a lot of people delineate between those two things as one being maybe more, at least at a base level, more accessible than the other. The interesting thing that I'm just putting this to you as an idea to think on is that I'm personally of the belief that there isn't such a distinction between the two, and that there's actually more of a continuum. I think that the analogy that I always use when describing this to people is that high magic or ceremonial magic is the first approach to the spirit. So that's going to use a really crass and corporate analogy. That's going to a networking event in your best suit and making a good impression and shaking people's hands and putting on your telephone voice. And the folk magic is once you've got a familiarity with that spirit, they're the little shortcuts. That's its cell phone number. That you can then. So again, this completely unverified personal gnosis, but it's myself and other magicians have actually spoken about this. So if you'll indulge me a little preamble on this, my thought is that the folk magic that is most famous, powwow from from Pennsylvania, and hoodoo and Santeria and all these other different strains of folk magic. I think that what's happened here is that at some point or another, a magician has called and bound a particular spirit, and this spirit, when you bind a spirit, one of the things that you want to do is you want to say to them, how can I contact you easier without having to piss around with chalk circles on the floor and 10 days of abstinence and holy water and all the other fanfare for fanfare's sake that comes along with ceremonial magic. And the spirit will generally give you these little shortcuts. And in my experience, these little shortcuts have been rather folk magic-y. If you mix this root under a red candle with this on this day, and you say these words over it, then I will come and I will do X, Y, Z for you. And I wonder if through history, at some point way back in the distant past, somebody has bound a spirit and got these shortcuts. And of course, they don't write down, the full method that they use, but they write down the shortcut that works. And it was only the shortcut that was passed down. So the name and the method to actually make that first approach to the spirit has maybe been lost in history. And all that's survived is the little shortcuts that worked, these little bindings that, and methodologies that magicians through the centuries have been using, and that's essentially formed what is folk magic, because we know it works. We don't know how it works, but it's why my personal opinion on that is that all magic is spirit based in some way, shape, or form. What do you think?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I have to sit with it for a while, but it certainly seems, plausible to me. I like it. I like the idea of it being in a continuum. I mean, most things are, So,
for sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just Luke, from your perspective, if Tim had gone through with the ritual, but obviously he didn't have a name or, a class to go off of, or a hierarchy, what would you recommend in that circumstance?
You put me on the spot a little bit there. So I would say, yeah, I mean, the difficulty is that you don't one of the kind of tenets of magic is that you can't really call something that you don't know. And that's a tricky one. So I would have suggested, probably, me being the grimoire purist I am, I would have suggested going with one of the older grimoires, something like the Heptameron or the Elucidarium or something like that. And I think that the only way that you can really get to a spirit like that is by calling on a more senior spirit to bring it to you. So it would be about calling down that hierarchy all the way from these celestial entities like angels and their ministers, all the way down to the more terrestrial creatures that some people, and I'm sorry, Tim, I know how much you hate this word, might call demons, and or at least sublunar spirits, chthonic spirits of the earth, as it were. And as you get down that hierarchy, you would speak to one of these chief spirits and say, whatever is inhabiting here, I know that you have regency over that because you're a higher ranking spirit. Bring them to me and make them minister unto me, as it were. So yeah, it would be. I mean, there would be definitely methodology to get to that. It would just be a lot more of a drawn out process than this is their name, this is their sigil. You stand in a circle and you call them, not to sound flippant about how difficult magic can be sometimes.
And I think that what's interesting to me about it, and the reason why I kind of really am inspired by this whole book, is because it manifested in me this idea about how involved is magic, whether it's folk magic, ceremonial magic, is in the paranormal. And if there are techniques and methods that we can use from magic to investigate the paranormal in a more intimate way and make it more of an even keel, because I don't know, I feel that there is this connection, and I feel that that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with this show and with my own magic is really find the things that we can use in magic to bring about a Bigfoot or a cryptid or a ghost or even an alien. I mean, that idea is not new. It's an old idea that's been around for a long time, but it is, I feel, in the evolution of investigating the paranormal, it's a necessary step.
So in The Long Lost Friend, there is a charm, which is shorthand. We call it the Trotterhead charm, which is to stop this, so-called witch servant, this Trotterhead, from coming and harassing you and giving you nightmares and harassing your livestock and so forth. This charm, from powwow people I know, has been incredibly successful at stopping recurrence of so-called quote unquote nighttime invaders of people. People who are complaining that there's shadow people or there's the old hag or whatever you want to call it that is bothering them at night. This Trotterhead charm, it's very simple, and it's usually something you attach to you either put it under your bed or attach it to your headboard. And in practice, from cases I've known, it's been incredibly successful about stopping these people who are like really tormented by these nighttime invaders, as we call them. So, there's your magic, your folk magic and paranormal crossover right there.
I love that. I'd really like to I need to get the long lost friend and really dig into it. I'm curious about, even if you didn't do a ritual, even if you didn't do any of like the actual magical techniques, if you and Chad just showed up at the bridge or any of the areas that you investigate, and instead of wearing just your regular street clothes, you put on white linen robes and you lit some candles and some incense and you just called out to whatever was around. What kind of a response would that evoke? Whether it evoked any kind of response or a different flavor of response, or a different kind of response, rather than just kind of like these ambiguous sounds or feelings. I wonder if that would kind of create a more direct and intimate experience.
It's entirely possible. I think the most immediate effect you would get would be to have someone call the police on you for being quote unquote Satanist in Gettysburg, because this is Gettysburg, Pennsylvania we're talking about.
Yeah.
Potentially dangerous reaction, I think, is possibly what you might have there, to be perfectly honest. Like Chad mentioned earlier on about something, I can't remember the exact phraseology, but something kind of charging you guys at some point. Am I right in saying that, Chad?
So what essentially happened in that encounter was, we were in Michaud, which is a very active area. It's a large state forest.
I've had my own little encounter at Michaud.
To the west of Gettysburg. And we were in a place called Harry Springs, and that's H-A-I-R-Y, not H-A-R-R-Y.
Mm-hmm.
And we were taking a witness's story, and Tim was listening to his story intently, as he's wont to do. And I typically will roam about. Just, I was moving into some woods. We were on a little trail just off the road, and I was watching some lights that were going off in the woods. And then I had this feeling of I don't want to say dread. That's not the right feeling. I had this feeling like something was about to happen. There you go. And then I heard this loud noise, and then all of a sudden just something was charging out of the forest towards us. So my initial reaction was to pull my walking stick in front of me, grab those guys and say, back up now, because it sounded like a freight train was coming. Now my first reaction was, bear or some, animal, but nothing came. I didn't hear it. And usually my encounters with like a bear, there would have been some kind of warning, such as like the popping of its jaws, because they make this popping noise with their jaws, where they huff, or they'll stand up, or, there's usually some kind of, display or noise before they do anything. This was just something. I heard this loud noise, and the next thing you know, here comes something was supposedly coming out through the brush at us. I heard sticks and everything breaking and crashing, and it ended up nothing came. So, and it wasn't like it came, that was like some physical creature running at us and stopping, because you would have heard that too, or seen something in my headlamp, but saw nothing. So that was very unnerving, to say the least.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, it's interesting because of how common that is in a lot of Bigfoot reports, but it's never, no one ever sees anything. This massive, supposedly, 7 to 10 foot, 11 foot tall creature is running at you with full force in the woods, and then it just stops, but you never see anything. And in a lot of this stuff, you never see, when I was at Gazoo's Woods with both you, Tim, and my other co-host, Alden, he and I got paced out pretty, not aggressively, but I mean, it was constant when we were walking back. And when we shined our flashlight there was nothing. There was no deer, there were no raccoons, and there certainly wasn't a 9 foot tall, hairy ape man walking next to us in the woods. But we heard it, and it would stop when we stopped, even if it was a little bit delayed.
Mm-hmm.
But even if these things are ninjas of the woods, you'd still see something. It defies the idea of logic that this massive thing can just evade all sight, all
Well,
detection.
exactly. And that's like when the first time we were at Gazoo's Woods and we had the first strange night there was things moving around in front of us. I mean, I could literally hear something walking in front of me. My headlamp's dead on it. And I knew the noise was 3 feet or less in front of me, like right in front of me. And there was nothing there. And those woods are very open.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like Michaud, which is, more overgrown. I mean, there was nothing there. I mean, I even said to Tim, I'm like, Tim, I can hear it. It's right in front of me. We hear it. It's crash. And, I'm hearing something moving in front of me. And like, there's nothing there. My flashlight and the beam from my headlamp is shooting 20 plus feet through the woods. And I know this thing's 3 feet in front of me or less, and actually right in front of me. And there's nothing there. So it's astounding.
Let's talk about Gazoo's for a minute, because me and Chad, me and Tim had our own little experience, and I haven't actually talked about that on the show. Tim, could you just go from your perspective that day that you had with me in Gazoo's? Because Luke was kind of involved in that as well.
Very loosely. Very, very loosely.
We teleported Luke in.
Yeah, exactly. They're in spirit, if you'll excuse the play on words.
Our most successful magical operation ever. Oh, geez. It was a weird day.
They're all weird days.
Yeah. It's like, where do you want to start?
So you met me in the parking lot.
Was one of many strange days I've had there. You were taking me to a place where you had some. Was it you heard knocking or something?
I heard basically three sounds in continuation of each other very quickly. So I had a weird thought when I got to this part of the trail that if I kept going, I was going to see something I wasn't prepared for. Then at the same,
Gotcha.
then I heard two wood knocks to my right, and then immediately after that, I'm still standing in the same spot. There's something whistling that kind of sounds like a bird, but a very bad imitation of a bird, and then a bunch of crows fly out of a tree to my left, and I just kind of turned around and went back. And as I was walking back to the car, I heard something grunt that was a lot bigger than a deer, which is the biggest thing that's in those woods.
Yeah. So we immediately where we got up to that area, we started hearing tapping. We kind of followed it off trail, and it seemed like the tapping was staying 20, 30 yards ahead of us, no matter how far we penetrated into the woods. Kind of walked back out. We cut down a side trail. Had you already established a gifting area or not yet?
I hadn't. I knew where I was going to do it, but I hadn't actually left anything there at that point.
Okay, yeah. So I left a bell and what else did I left something.
A bell and something else, yeah.
Oh wait,
a coin, yeah, a coin.
Yeah, and whole day we were hearing knocks and stuff. We decided to walk back down to the other part. The knocks followed us, and these aren't like baseball bats hitting a tree. These are taps.
Yeah, they're light.
Yeah, this is not a woodpecker either.
Which is weird, because since then I've been out in the woods or even on my porch, which is a screened-in porch, and I've heard woodpecker more so than I think I ever have in my whole life. But it's almost like a reminder, like, hey, just let you know that's not what that was. That's not a woodpecker you heard.
Yeah, this wasn't a woodpecker. Somebody else said they could have been nuthatches or something. Whatever it was, it followed us around all day from one part of the park to the other.
And it responded pretty cogently.
Yeah. At one point, I knocked a pattern, and we got the same pattern got answered back. So, the pretty crafty woodpecker, if that's what it was.
You saw something twice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, when we were walking to the area that you were going to establish your gifting area, I saw just something big. It's so hard to describe. It's just something big and very fluid, like moves through the woods. It was like
in a gliding motion.
Yeah, very much a gliding motion, to the point where I was like, I almost was like, is that a bird flying sideways? Like a huge bird, though, like a huge bird, bigger than I mean, it would have to be a golden eagle or something, but like flying sideways through the woods, I don't think so. That's not how aerodynamics work.
Probably just a fox, Tim, right?
Yeah, I saw that, and then on the other side, we heard that low kind of hum, which we actually recorded. That real kind of low bassy
Mm-hmm.
kind of hum, and the knocks kept happening, and then eventually we heard an owl. It was late afternoon. It wasn't dark.
It was like 4 or 5 o'clock.
We heard an owl. We commented on the owl, and I saw something. I saw that there was still sun, and the sun had hit something, and I'm looking at it, and previous to that, I had been in this other area called Muddy Creek, and I was urinating, and I looked up on the hill, and I saw this perfect silhouette of like a Bigfoot. And I didn't even think it was I thought it was pareidolia at the time. And I was looking at it, I was like, boy, does that look just like I should take a picture of that because it looks like the perfect silhouette of a Bigfoot. But I didn't. For some reason, I didn't get my camera out. I just peed and left. Well, this day at Gazoo's, I was peeing as we heard the owl go off. I'm over in the side peeing, and we hear the owl. We commented on the owl. And then I walked, there's a little bridge, if we're noting bridges, a little bridge across a little tiny like creek there. I walk across that bridge, and I see the sun hitting something about 100 yards away. And I'm thinking, that looks like a Bigfoot kneeling down there, sitting down there. That's ridiculous. I know that's not what it is. This is what I'm telling myself. But this time I'm going to take a picture, because it's not going to be like last time where I saw that silhouette. I at least wanted to like show people, like, look how much this silhouette looks like a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's what it was, but look at this. This is a good example of pareidolia or whatever. So I snap a picture. I snapped a few, but only one wasn't blurry. And I said, I kept my eyes locked on it. I was like, I'm going to walk towards this thing. It's either going to run away, or we're going to walk up to it and see it's a stump or whatever it is. And as we're walking, I literally have my eyes locked on it. We're walking directly toward it. You got a text from your girlfriend.
And she had made a collage of how much my cat looks like owls.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, we just heard an owl. Look at this. And I looked over for maybe 2 seconds, 3 at the most, maybe. And I looked back, and whatever I had my eyes locked on was just totally gone, was not there.
And we didn't hear anything move.
No, no. And we walked up to the place where it was, and there was, at the time we thought, I think 3 tree structures. I went back at a later time and looked some more. There's like 6 tree structures there, right in that area. So, this is a very, very weird day, and whatever I caught on my camera is what they would call a blob squatch. It's not going to convince anyone of anything, but I think it's really interesting, at least.
Yeah, it was a very weird day, and I'm just curious about, that day. How similar has that been to the times that you and Chad have been in those woods, in Gazoo's?
I would say it's different at night, and I don't know whether that's just because you don't have the benefit of vision, but that night we were there was pretty harrowing. At some point we realized some of the sounds we were hearing around us, at least, were rocks being thrown at us, or acorns, or something hard enough to penetrate. You could hear it come through the leaves, whack, 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 and then hit the ground beside us. We walked down to one part and walked back into this other part, and we saw red eye shine. And Chad, you want to tell this part, Chad? Are you there?
No, I'm here. I'm just listening.
Yeah, you want to tell the part where you got your cry back?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay,
You're doing a good job.
Okay, so Chad says we had left. So we had met another Bigfoot witness over in Lancaster County, and she had had what she felt was a rock thrown at her, and she gave us the rock. And Chad's like, we should leave this rock at the cemetery up there at Gazoo's. So he left the rock, and we go back in, and he says to the woods, I left you something along these lines. I would like something in return, please. Or I would like something in return. And I went, please. Like I said to Chad, like, say please. Like I was like, don't be so demanding, kind of thing. And
he visibly cringed when I said that.
Yeah, I was like, say please. But immediately afterwards, he just gets this cry, this weird cry as an answer. And I was like, whoa. And then we caught red eye shine, big red eye shine, and there's only certain things that can have red eye shine in Pennsylvania. Really that big, it would have to have been a bear, and whatever this wasn't acting like a bear. It would be very unusual for a bear to be there anyway. So we catch this red eye shine, and I was very jealous that Chad got a response. So I said, hey, throw a rock at us, but don't hit us. Have it land right beside us. And sure enough, whack, like immediately after asking, here comes something through the trees, and a rock hits right beside me. And it was pretty amazing, pretty intense encounter, but different than when we were there. I don't think I think we were pressing our luck, Chad. I think. Yeah. I don't know how much longer whatever it was going to put up with us.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I've been wanting to spend the night in Gazoos, like a full night, and just see what happened. Because there's so much there. And I know that me and, Tim, you and I have talked about how you can't use it so much. You can't be there all the time. You got to give it like a cool down, because eventually either it stops or the tone of the activity definitely changes.
I think that's true of all these places.
Yeah, I agree.
Like if we hit Site 7 too much, it's the same thing. It'll just kind of peter out and just kind of be like, I mean, it's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
You could have something crazy happen 2 times in a row, but it seems like you do need to have a cooling off period with these places.
Yeah, I agree. Since the events of the Witch Cloud, the other areas that you've gone to, Site 7, Michaud, have you guys been back to Pandemonium since that whole incident?
Yeah. We went, was it last fall, Chad? Did we go?
Something like that. Yeah, we went out for just a quick trip.
Yeah. Which was interesting because we both felt like we were being like almost seduced into sleeping there again. We both got really, really tired, and Chad's like, should I just break out my tent? Should we just stay the night here? But I didn't have any gear with me, so
yeah.
Out of curiosity, do any of you guys know what the word pandemonium means?
Home of all demons, essentially.
Yeah, full of demons. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one of the reasons we went there, because these place names, these devil place names, for whatever reason, are fraught with these kind of encounters. So that's specifically one of the reasons we specifically went there.
I just wanted to see the cool ghost town.
And well, yeah, in the woods. And again, it's like the show that we were doing was basically a ghost show until something else decided that that wasn't going to be the way it was.
Well, that's interesting that you bring up ghosts again, Tim, because you guys mentioned earlier on in the episode that there's this. I don't know if you particularly attributed it to the Ghost Hunter clan, as it were, but there's this like pervasive belief that all ghosts are, or all spirits are the spirits of the dead.
Mm-hmm. Or demons. There's nothing in between. It's just those two concepts.
Satan or old Uncle Frank, that's come back from the dead. And so, can you talk a little bit more about that, and kind of what pushes you towards not believing that that's the case, and particularly with this Witch Cloud case and the bridge, like what's edging you towards something other than necromantic spirits?
So, the couple that we interviewed on the bridge, Bethany and Shannon, the second night we went just randomly, they happened to be there again when we got there. I think it was like we went the first time on a Saturday, maybe the second time on a Thursday, something like that. So it wasn't even like the same day of the week. And it was like 2 weeks later, and they happened to be there again when we got there, which is very interesting. And they told us in between they had visited, because they lived in Gettysburg, so they had visited once in between, and they said they pulled up, there was nobody there, but they saw something walking across the bridge, and it was very tall. I forget what they said, 7 or 8 feet. They said it was as wide as Chad and I standing together, and it had arms that hung down past its knees. Now, what dead human looks like this? So, and of course, they're kind of ghost people, so they're like, yeah, we saw the spirit of the bridge, or we saw the man on the bridge, or the man who died on the bridge, or however they phrased it. So there's that. There's the fact that people are seeing these apparitions of these hanged Confederate soldiers on the other bridge that probably never died there. And people, the story that goes with the Suicide Bridge, Eisenhower Bridge, is that somebody hanged themselves on the bridge. So you get a lot of people reporting, encounters with this spirit, although they can give you no details about it, and they disagree whether it's a man, a woman, or whether it's been several people. The story changes because it's whispering down the lane kind of thing, and I can find no records whatsoever of anybody hanging themselves on that bridge. So that kind of fed into it. I mean, I kind of had some of these ideas before the witch cloud, but the witch cloud kind of really solidified it. It's like, so if people are seeing apparitions of things that never lived, essentially, of these Confederate soldiers who never existed, this probably isn't the ghost, the spirit of a dead human. This is probably something else playing off of these ideas or playing off of this energy. Unless dead human spirits can change form and play off this energy themselves, in which case, then we're talking about something else altogether, I guess.
Seems unlikely. I mean, the interesting thing as well about the soldiers, it's not uncommon for spirits to take kind of abstract forms. If you look at some of the descriptions of the way that spirits appear in some of the old medieval literature, them a singular spirit appearing as like a regiment of soldiers, or a number of different entities at once, is not in the least bit uncommon. In fact, spirits appearing as soldiers is quite common in my experience. No wonder. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, I suppose, but it's another one of these interesting little correspondences there.
Yeah, and I think in the bonus audio, that ghost tour guide Clinton, he happened to be there again when we went back with Soraya, and he was describing a story. He said one of the people he took on the ghost tour, I think, came back after he took them there. They came back later that night and parked there, and they had someone, they called it a ghost, a spirit of some sort, dressed in gray, looking in the windows of their car, which is very, very disturbing to them. But, of course, we're in Gettysburg, so anything in gray becomes immediately a Confederate soldier. Whether that was that or not, I don't know. But it was another interesting thing. So, yeah.
It's also interesting that, and I said this earlier, all these ghost behaviors, such as the knocks, the bangs, the looking in windows, are all folklorically the same behaviors that have been attributed to Bigfoot.
I didn't even make that connection with that thing looking in the car window.
Yeah. Really? Because that's what I thought you were talking. I thought you were going to make an allusion that it was Bigfoot instead of the ghost of a Confederate soldier.
No, sometimes I miss them. I'm good at making connections, but sometimes I miss them. That's a good point.
Every once in a while, I get lucky. But no, so it's funny how all these things act the same, yet they don't act the same. So, and then we've had cases. We've had cases where we talked to people, and Tim has had people come on the podcast. And I'm going to go back to the one of your favorites, Tim, when the 3 boys saw something, and all 3 saw something different. And then we have recently had where I've heard something and Tim's heard something and it sounded slightly different to us. Or we've seen lights that have looked slightly different to us.
Not only has it sounded different to us, but when we get the recordings home, what's on the recording is not what either one of us heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or we totally don't hear something that was there, such as Site 7 recently, where we were seeing all these lights. I mean, the lights were there, but I don't remember hearing what that I'm just going to go pseudo because it didn't quite sound like a fox. I don't remember hearing a pseudo fox. I would have mentioned it.
So far, usually when we publish those foxes, the first thing everyone says, so far, no one has said fox to those screams. Those
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I always note that stuff because I'm usually tuned in to animal noises and all that stuff. And Tim's really tuned in when it comes to audio also. But we did not note that at all. So that's what I'm trying to say is, that could very well would have been that guy's Confederate soldier could have been somebody else's Bigfoot.
That's interesting. So, but this is because we're striking on a lot of these correspondences. That is nothing unusual in the magical thing as well. Quite often in a lot of the old grimoires and manuscripts, it suggests bringing more than one person into the circle because it means that you've got more chance of somebody seeing something. Because not everybody is going to see or hear the spirit. For some reason, there's some people that are just attuned to it, which sounds like you are, Chad, because you had quite visceral experiences on that bridge. I weirdly enough, I had an experience a few years back now, where I was living in a house and was slightly more cavalier about my practice and was performing an operation in the house with the express permission of my roommate, I might add. But I'd finished the ritual, and he bumped into me outside and was like, what was that? And I said, what was what? Like, I didn't really get anything much. I kind of walked away from it considering it was a failure. And he was like, there were like 6 or 7 blood curdling screams that came out of your room. He was like, I was knocking on the door to check if you were okay. And I didn't hear him knock on the door, for one. And for two, I certainly didn't hear these blood curdling screams that he was talking about. It sounded like a woman screaming. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it seems within the realm of the kind of stuff we're experiencing sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, he quickly moved out afterwards, I'm surprised.
Was that your intention all along to drive him out?
Oh God, you know what? The guy never cleaned up the kitchen. He never did the dishes. So, as opposed to just sitting him down and having a word with him like a normal person, I summoned a demon to get rid of him. It's my MO.
And Luke's first grimoire is Lieber, how to get rid of bad roommate-siums.
And how to curse him. But no, I feel also that what people bring to the table themselves affects these things too. Like, there's a lot of intention, and I'm going to use the 3 soldiers at Sachs Bridge, because every time we were at Sachs Bridge, first off, it was always a zoo because there was always a lot of people there because that is the famous bridge, and we've never had nothing. We got nothing there at all. Even at the times where we did have Sachs Bridge to ourselves for a short period of time, it just did not feel the same as Eisenhower Bridge did. And everybody says they see these 3 dead soldiers, and I talk to numerous people who I know that are historians, and they're like, no, if you go there and if you go to the Gettysburg Visitor Center and you ask one of these guys who are the historians and say, oh yeah, the dead soldiers, and they're like, no, that did not happen. They will tell you that did not happen because there's no historical facts to back it up. And they'll say, no, they were not going to take the time. Like Tim says, they're going to put a bullet in somebody's head. There's guns everywhere. Why would you make that point? But people go there with that intent. They want to see that. That's what they want to see. And they get what they're looking for. You know, you go to a rock concert to hear music, you get the music you go to what you want. So the question is, if they're getting what they're looking for, why are they getting what they're looking for? Is it because something's pulling something out of their head? Or, plus intention, just, sometimes all that intention can create and manifest things.
And what do you think it is, Chad? Do you think there's like a kind of energetic exchange going on between whatever the entity is there and, the psychic bubble of the people visiting? Or do you think that people are kind of projecting what they'd like to see on an area?
I think, and I'm just going to use this from what I've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is there, and this is just based on, we're talking about Suicide Bridge here, just so correct.
Eisenhower Bridge, right?
Page. Okay. So at Eisenhower Bridge, whatever's there, I always get the feeling that whatever's there is old. And it seems to be that, especially at that one spot, that cold is not the same cold as like cold that you feel from like cold air or submersing yourself in cold water. It's like having the heat from you taking out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially from doing the ST sessions, I was very, very drained when we did the ST sessions. The first couple of times I went there, I was violent. I was very, very sick afterwards, to the point where Tim was like, "Oh my God, did he have COVID?" And I was worn out. I mean, I slept the whole one day after the first time we were there, and I never do that. I always usually get up and am active, and it just took everything I had. I was weak, but it seems like whatever's there wants something. I don't know. But it always seems like, using the example, when we walked across the bridge, it started acting up. We even heard, like, I think, did we hear the babies cry that same night, Tim?
I don't know if it was the same time. I know it was one time when we pulled up right before we turned the recorder on, there was the baby crying sound.
Mm-hmm.
That is creepy as shit.
Yes, very.
It was a cold night too. So like, who has their baby out tonight? Like, it just
late at night too.
Another common Bigfoot trope.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So
is that right? Babies cry. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
So not only do you hear Bigfoot cry, like babies crying when you're out looking for Bigfoot, but it's also said that if you play the sound of a baby crying, it will attract Bigfoot. That's like Flesh and Blood people say this. So, there's a lot of weird crossovers like that.
A lot, and car doors slamming, which we've heard before in the middle of nowhere, and so on and so forth. And it's just like, it wants you to be over there. It wants you to be over there, for whatever reason. And then we've also noticed, like, the larger the group of people, the less activity there is. And I said to Tim the one time, I almost feel like that when there's more people, you have like this, and I'm using the vampire, example, because it's just what it feels like to me. It has more to draw from. So, if you have like a bunch of people to draw from, you just take a little from each one. Versus if you have more than just only one or two people, you need to draw more from those two people.
I might offer an alternate theory on that one, Chad, if I might be so bold.
No, go, please.
And again, I'm a hammer, so everything looks like a nail. But going from a magician's perspective, in my experience, one of the fundamental misunderstandings that people seem to have of chthonic spirits that some maybe not in the know might call demons, or terrestrial entities, and I mean generally spirits in general, you can say this about, is that they're maybe slightly more robust than they are as far as their propensity to show up. And one of the things that I've noticed, and then again, this is something that's been noted down by the magicians of old, but something that modern practitioners will freely admit, generally from all traditions as well, is that solitude away from other people is a one of the tenets of a successful operation, because spirits don't particularly like being around a lot of people. They have some rather bizarre sensitivities. Dr. Stephen Skinner, who's an expert in this field, likens them to a wild animal. And he said, if a group of people walk up to a wild horse or a wild pony, it's likely to spook and run away. And spirits are very much the same. That they don't like conjuring a spirit in an area in the inner city, for example. Like the stimuli that are around, the traffic, the noise, the smells, all of these things that go along with living in a metropolis is not conducive to a spirit arriving in the least. So I wonder if these large groups of cameras flashing and tourists talking and all the things that go along with ghost tours is actually just more. It sounds strange to think about a spirit being spooked out, but in my experience as well, they don't like large groups of people. There are things about us that they find intolerant.
Yeah, Luke, Octavian just noted, I saw it too. As you're talking about that, something moved behind you.
Wasn't Sterling.
Huh.
I didn't see it because I have my phone up to my ear because I can't see you guys on camera anymore.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. I'm sure it won't be the last. Okay. Well, what did it look like?
It didn't have a shape. It was just a shadow, just right past you.
Yeah, I thought big bird maybe, but that, I couldn't tell you what kind or anything. You know what I mean? Like I have no clue.
That's interesting. Well, shit.
I know that Chad has to go soon. One last question. Chad, you've given us your conclusion or your interpretation of it. Tim, what has been your most recent or final conclusion or interpretation of the witch cloud phenomena?
I think, like I said initially, I think for me, it's kind of like a both end thing. It's something that was probably there already, that is either somehow using or reacting to the energy that people are bringing there. That's the best as I can do. It's hard to define any of this stuff.
No, I know what you mean, but I would agree with you. I think that definitely plays a part in it. Where can people find the Witch Cloud and everything tied to it?
So strangefamiliars.com is me. You can find everything, links to everything I do there. If you want to get right to the Witch Cloud, it's stonebreath.bandcamp.com. You can download it there. You can purchase the book there with or without the download. You can get the book on Amazon, but you're not going to get the audio download. I recommend that people get the audio with it. It's really meant to be a multimedia experience.
And Chad, you have Ruck Rabbit Outdoors. That's where people can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Ruck Rabbit Outdoors, either through the Etsy site, the Instagram page, or through the Facebook page.
I would love to have you on again to talk about that, and I'd love to have both of you on to talk about all of your adventures.
Sure thing.
Yep, not a problem. Be more than happy to come back.
Awesome. So, gentlemen, thank you guys so much, and we'll be seeing you guys again very soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And that was my interview with Timothy Renner and Chad Redding of Strange Familiars podcast. All of their information will be in the show notes below, as well as where you can get a copy of The Witch Cloud. We will be having them back on the show very soon for other roundtable and other episodes. With that, I want to thank everybody for being here and have a great night.